This message might change how you see yourself forever. There's a thought most people avoid because it cuts too deep, too fast. That a lot of what gets called love isn't really love at all, but a quiet fear of being alone. That the urge to always have someone there isn't connection, it's distraction. And some relationships aren't built to bring you closer to yourself, but to keep you far enough away that you never have to face what's actually there. That discomfort you feel in silence, that restless pull to fill the space, it isn't random. It's the part of you that knows something real is waiting underneath it. The Stoics understood this in a way that still feels unsettling today. A person who cannot sit with themselves is already in chains, even if those chains feel comfortable. Because dependence doesn't always look like weakness. Sometimes it looks like attachment, like routine, like something you've convinced yourself you need. But the moment you remove the noise, the moment you stop reaching outward and start turning inward, something changes. You begin to see clearly, and that clarity doesn't arrive gently. It exposes what's been ignored. It reveals what's been avoided. But it also gives you something most people never reach, a chance to understand yourself without distortion. And once you see that, even briefly, it becomes difficult to go back to living the way you did before. It often begins so quietly that you almost miss it. A moment with no notifications, no conversation, no one else shaping your behavior, just stillness. And in that stillness, something unfamiliar starts to surface. Not the version of you that speaks or reacts, but the version underneath, all of that, unfiltered, unedited, unconcerned with expectations. At first, it doesn't feel like clarity. It feels like noise. Thoughts overlapping, emotions rising without structure, fragments of things you've pushed aside slowly coming back into view. And because nothing interrupts it, it feels louder than it actually is. Most people never stay in that moment long enough to understand it. They move away from it. They reach for something, anything, that restores distraction. But that instinct to escape is exactly what keeps things buried. Because what feels uncomfortable isn't the silence itself. It's what the silence reveals when nothing is covering it anymore. There's a reason the mind resists stillness. It isn't used to being seen this clearly. When there's space, it fills it, and not always in comfortable ways. It brings forward unresolved thoughts, questions you've postponed for convenience. It exposes contradictions you've learned to ignore. And because these things don't have immediate answers, they create tension. But unfamiliar doesn't mean unnatural. It usually means unpracticed. The ability to sit with your own thoughts without reacting to them is something most people never develop. So instead, they stay busy, they stay occupied, they stay surrounded, not because they want to, but because it's easier than facing what's waiting underneath. And over time, that avoidance becomes so normal that even a few minutes of silence feels overwhelming, not because the mind is too heavy, but because it's finally being experienced without interruption. But if you stay with it, not all at once, but gradually, the noise starts to organize itself. Thoughts separate, patterns emerge. You begin to notice not just what you're thinking, but how you're thinking. And that awareness changes your position completely. You're no longer fully inside the experience, reacting to everything as it comes. You're observing it, understanding it, creating space between you and your immediate response. And that space is where clarity begins. Not the kind that gives instant answers, but the kind that removes distortion, without constant influence, without pressure to respond, without needing to maintain a version of yourself for someone else. You start seeing things as they actually are. And that kind of clarity is rare, because most people never give themselves the conditions to experience it. The Stoics saw this clearly. They didn't treat solitude as something to avoid, but as something to use, a place where the mind could be understood, not controlled. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That retreat isn't about escaping life. It's about stepping back from constant reaction long enough to actually see it. And once you begin to see clearly, something changes. You notice when you're reaching for distraction, when you're avoiding something instead of facing it, when you're choosing comfort over understanding.com. And that awareness doesn't judge you. It simply shows you what's happening. And for the first time, you have a choice, not based on habit, not based on fear, but based on clarity. And from that point forward, everything starts to shift in subtle ways. You begin to realize how much of your life was shaped by avoiding yourself. How many decisions were made to stay comfortable rather than to stay honest. How often you chose noise over clarity, simply because clarity required you to sit with things you didn't fully understand yet. But now that space feels different. It's no longer something you're trying to escape. It's something you're learning from, something you're using. And in that process, you start building something that doesn't depend on constant distraction. A sense of direction that comes from within, not from what's happening around you. A sense of stability that doesn't collapse the moment things go quiet. And that changes how you move through everything else. And once you've experienced even a glimpse of that, it becomes difficult to go back. Not because you've figured everything out, but because you've seen what's possible when you stop running from yourself. You stop looking for something to fill the space. You stop expecting something external to fix what feels incomplete. Instead, you start building something that reflects you, something that holds even when nothing else is there to support it. And that's the shift most people never make. Not because it's impossible, but because it requires staying in the very place they've been trying to escape. But if you're still here listening to this, then part of you already understands. And if you want to keep going deeper into that, to think more clearly, to understand yourself without distortion, to build something that actually feels like your own, then consider this a decision. To stay connected to the version of you that refuses to live unconsciously. And that's where the real shift begins. Not in some dramatic realization, but in small, consistent moments where you choose to stay present with yourself instead of moving away, where you allow thoughts to pass without immediately reacting to them. Where you listen without trying to silence what you hear. It's subtle, almost invisible from the outside, but internally, it changes the foundation you're operating from. What once felt like emptiness starts to feel like space. What once felt overwhelming starts to feel manageable. And what once felt like something to escape from begins to feel like something you can actually learn from. Not because the thoughts themselves have changed, but because your relationship to them has. And in that shift, something important becomes clear. The silence was never the problem. It was the doorway. Because the truth is, most people don't walk into relationships with a clear understanding of themselves. They walk in carrying questions they haven't answered, feelings they haven't processed, and uncertainties they haven't fully faced. It doesn't look like avoidance from the outside. It looks like connection, like effort, like emotional investment, but underneath it, there's often something else driving it. A quiet need to fill space. A subtle desire to not feel alone with your own thoughts for too long. And that's where things begin to blur. Because when connection becomes a way to escape rather than a way to share, it changes the entire foundation it's built on. It happens gradually. You don't consciously decide to avoid yourself. You just start prioritizing what feels easier. It's easier to focus on someone else's day than to reflect on your own direction. Easier to engage in constant conversation, to sit in silence and face questions that don't have immediate answers. Easier to stay occupied in shared routines than to explore what you actually want outside of them. And over time, that ease becomes a pattern where your attention is always directed outward, where your sense of stability starts depending on something beyond you, where your inner world becomes secondary to whatever is happening in the relationship. At first, it doesn't feel like a loss. It feels natural. It feels like connection. But over time, that natural feeling begins to crack. Small frustrations start to emerge. Subtle dissatisfaction. A sense that something is missing, even though everything looks fine from the outside. And this is where the choice appears. Do you keep running outward, hoping someone else will fill the gap? Or do you finally turn inward into the space you've been avoiding all along? Because the truth is that inner space is always there. It's not created by effort, it's revealed by presence, by showing up for yourself consistently, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when you'd rather distract yourself with conversation, even when it seems easier to look elsewhere for validation. This turning inward isn't dramatic.com. It doesn't happen overnight. It's incremental. A few quiet minutes each day. A few observations of your own thoughts without judgment. A few moments of acknowledging how you really feel instead of how you think you should feel. And over weeks and months, that attention builds a foundation. A foundation that doesn't collapse when others fail you, when plans fall through, when life feels uncertain or chaotic, because you've built something inside that isn't dependent on the outside. It's subtle, but it shows up in how you engage with the world. You notice patterns before they control you. You respond instead of react. You create space for what truly matters rather than constantly filling voids with distractions. And this is what Stoics meant when they talked about freedom, not freedom from circumstances, not freedom from challenges, freedom from being unconsciously driven by them, freedom to act with clarity, to choose with intention, and to live anchored in your own understanding rather than external approval. And once you taste even a fraction of that freedom, it becomes addictive in the best sense. Not because it makes life easy, but because it makes life real, because it gives you ownership over your mind, your choices, and your responses. And that ownership changes everything. It changes how you speak to others, how you hold space in relationships, how you invest your energy, how you navigate challenges without being swept away. And ultimately, it changes how you see yourself, no longer as someone constantly needing to escape, no longer as someone defined by what happens to them, but as someone capable of presence, clarity, and intentional action. This is the shift that underlies every great transformation. And it doesn't come from the external world. It comes from consistently choosing to stay, to observe, and to learn from your own inner life. From embracing the quiet that most people run from understanding that the doorway to growth was never outside, it was within. And as you continue, something subtle happens. Your decisions start reflecting more of your internal compass than external noise. You notice how often you had been reacting to the expectations of others rather than responding to what truly mattered to you. You start to see patterns in your own behavior, moments where you deferred, adapted, or softened yourself just to keep the peace or to fit in. And this awareness isn't a judgment, it's a discovery. A revelation of what was real beneath the surface all along. And with each small observation, the gap between who you are being and who you truly are narrows. You begin noticing that discomfort isn't something to avoid. It's a guide, a signal that something worth understanding is present. Silence is no longer empty. It's alive, full of insight, full of clues about what you want, what you value, and what you've been avoiding. And as you spend more time here, something remarkable occurs. You stop chasing validation externally. You stop filling every moment with distraction. You stop needing someone else to confirm your worth. Instead, you build an internal compass, not rigid, not fixed, a sense of direction that comes from clarity, and that direction changes everything. It changes the way you show up in relationships. It changes the way you engage with work. It changes how you perceive challenges. Even small decisions feel different because they no longer carry hidden influences from past patterns or other people's expectations. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. Presence becomes a habit. Clarity becomes a habit. And the freedom that comes from self-understanding is no longer fleeting. It grows steady and quiet, like roots deepening in soil. And once you feel it, life begins to feel more yours than ever before. This is the culmination of the process. A life where you are not escaping yourself, not running from discomfort, not distracted by noise. A life where you meet your own thoughts without fear, where you allow emotions to arise without judgment, where decisions are guided by clarity, not habit, where silence is not something to fill, but a tool to understand. And as you move through this life, you notice the subtle power of choice. Every moment becomes an opportunity to act from awareness rather than reaction. Every relationship becomes a reflection of what you bring, not what you seek to escape. Every challenge becomes a chance to respond intentionally, not compulsively. And the most important shift of all is inside. You trust yourself. You understand yourself. You recognize the difference between the familiar pull of comfort and the deeper call of truth. You no longer confuse attachment with love, distraction with connection, habit with choice. And with that understanding comes freedom, not from life, but in life. A freedom rooted in your own clarity, your own presence, your own consistent attention to the reality within you. The Stoics, Jung, Epictetus. It is not philosophy alone, but practice. The practice of showing up for yourself, consistently, courageously, patiently, and when you do, life transforms from a series of reactions to a landscape of intentional actions, from a cycle of distraction to a rhythm of awareness, from confusion to clarity, from dependence to freedom. And that is the essence of true mastery. Not control over the world, not perfection, but a steady, deliberate alignment with the deepest parts of yourself, the parts that were always there, waiting to be seen, understood, and embraced. And that is where real life begins, not in noise, but in the quiet, deliberate presence of your own consciousness. And once you step into that, even briefly, even for moments at a time, you start building a life that is yours in every meaningful way. A life of clarity, intention, and real freedom. A life where you are fully awake, fully aware, and fully yourself.